Hello and welcome to my cellar. Don't know if this is going to be a very long one today. Don't have a lot of stuff to respond to, but we'll see how it goes. I only print these out an hour or two before I do this, so I can just start turning around in my head a little bit before we go, and then it's pretty much wing it. Okay. About artifacts. We were talking about artifacts. Yeah, I guess we'll start here. Remember that those who carry artifacts are targets for those looking for artifacts. This can cause a lot of grief in the character, for the character and the party. That's true. Artifacts draw people with selfish intent. They're going to get that artifact for themselves. And that's absolutely legitimate. That's what justifies having artifacts, artifact level stuff, having artifacts guarded well and heavily. The danger here is you don't want the players thinking they're being picked on and that you're being, I don't know what the correct term is today. We used to call them Indian givers, but I don't mean any. It just means don't give it to them and then plot and scheme to take it away, because then they're going to feel persecuted. Well, you just give us this stuff and then you do horrible things to us and you take it away. No, so you don't do it all the time. But then again, how many legitimate artifacts do you have floating around in your campaign? Legitimate artifacts, named artifacts, items of surpassing power. But it is a way to remind them that running around with artifacts, particularly if it's an artifact that doesn't give a constant or an immediate benefit, a chime of opening constructed by the god Pan only has a few limited uses. Thieves are going to want it, burglars or whatever. And more thieves and burglars are going to try to get it away. That's what thieves and burglars do. But again, let them play around with it for a while, have a good time. There's another comment on this general idea later on. Inquiring minds want to know, what's the longest campaign you ever played in or run? Well, the longest consecutive that I ran was probably just about 12 months in Carbondale, and we played a minimum of twice a week. I had the Saturday group, which was a large group, and then every week, at least one night, I had a group of 5 or 6 in my living room. Cheryl worked second shift. The baby would go down and we'd play. And we were every bit as much a testing group as we were a campaign, because I was trying out new things that I thought of. Gary was trying out new things he thought of. We were doing various mods to various rules, trying to shape the clay, so to speak, and figure out what's going on. But that was certainly the most intense period of my time doing it. So I don't know, roughly a year. There was probably 100, maybe 110 sessions during that period of time. So yeah, I got a bunch of hundreds of hours because some of those sessions, especially the Saturday sessions at the campus, those had run from 10 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon with a brief break for lunch. Oftentimes we ate through lunch. Somebody sent somebody out for whatever, and we eat while we played. The joys of eager anticipation and participation in something new. Um, now I was running a group, a campaign, if you will. I had a playtest group here in Cincinnati for a while. Jim Wampler was one of the players, and he immortalized us all with some great cartoons and stuff, including a DM screen that he made for me. Weighs a ton, but as long as I'm at home or not carrying it far, it's gorgeous. It has all the different. I was writing adventures or modules, if you will, and play testing it on them. And other than that, I've not had a lot of long, prolonged, protracted campaigns. I was doing other things. Okay, now this is a question that I once phrased partially to Gary. Where did the idea of dragons having breath weapons come from? I know fairy tales speak of dragons have breathing fire, but what about lightning bolts, acid poison, etc.? Well, I asked Gary much the same question. I said, well, what's up with this? Yeah, breathing fire. You can find a couple of references in different tales of breathing ice or extreme cold or spitting something corrosive. But for the most part, yeah, we talk about fire and dragons breathing fire. If you gave, I asked Gary, and basically what he told me was he was trying to make the different dragons unique. And he based it sort of on their color, copper dragons, green dragons. And he tried to have some sort of connection with the name of or the color of the dragons, and it was to make variety. You couldn't just keep running up against, red dragons all the time. I could have, but the general public's thirst and hunger for new didn't work that way. And then by coordinating the colors and the abilities, the breath weapon or whatever, and then where they lived, that way there were dragons everywhere. Some were more rare than others. But it was simply to provide variety so that the second and third time they ran into a dragon of a different color, again, because this was in those pure and virginal days when the players hadn't read all the books and memorized them. So they were learning too. And so their first encounter might have been with a green dragon breathing gas, I believe is what they do. I don't always adhere to that. When I use dragons, they're unique and their skills are unique to that dragon. Anyway, the next time they run into a blue one, they'd find out that no, it's not. They thought they had fighting dragons all figured out, and running into a blue reminded them that, oh, maybe we don't. So there was that element put into the game, that everything's a little different, and different breath weapons require different strategies. So it was to provide variety. I know I'm never supposed to put my hand in front of my face or whatever, but I'm not on TV, nor do I think I'll be on TV again anytime soon. Experienced DMs learn how to balance games. Magic is the easiest way to beef up weak players. This can go wrong in the way of Disney's Aladdin having powerful genie granting wishes. Yeah, I tend to with lower level players or early in a story setting, that is the easiest way. And you can measure and determine how much of this you're going to put into your game by what you give them. Rings with so many charges, wands with so many charges, um, other items with an increasing percentage of not working after the next time they've been used. And hopefully that they haven't used them up before they become powerful enough that it's not the major crutch they lean on. It's certainly a way, but it kind of cheapens the magic when you're giving lots of magic to low level players. One of the assumed motivations of being an adventurer is to acquire stuff, and I don't know that you're going to want to give it back up right away. Again, it's a balance thing. You've got to know your players. You've got to know the level of magic that you want to have in your campaign world. The world I've created has areas where the magic is weak, other areas where the magic is strong, but most of the world, 85% of the world, is magic works as one would expect. Next one. And yeah, before I go to the next one, yeah, giving a low level player a genie is definitely a game, if not a game breaker, at least a game cracker. Um, Always like the idea of a stable of characters, selecting the best one for a particular adventure. I think it's a wonderful idea for a number of reasons. Number one, when you tend to play a same player character again and again and again, it's way too easy to get too much of yourself, your own ego, wrapped up in that. And so when the inevitable happens, it becomes personal. I've actually I've had anecdotal reports of people becoming not diagnosed, but sure looks like clinically depressed because the character that they've been playing for the last 21 months is dead. Well, we never invested that much of ourselves in any one character. It's not to say that we didn't have favorites. Shoot, in the limited role playing that was involved with Fight in the Skies, I had favorite pilots. But with Fight in the Skies, you can't fly the same pilots in any time frame. That particular game is broken up into when various aircraft were available for frontline usage, and if you flew an Albatross D3 and for 16 missions, which is a very big accomplishment in Fight in the Skies, and then you got a chance to be to get a D5, which was a much better plane. You went back to being a rookie again and not necessarily being able to tail right away. Again, depending upon who was running your campaign. With us, we had the inventor running the campaign. So if Mike said, "This is what you got to do," okay, Mike, you wrote the game, no problem. So getting back to role playing, if you have a thief and a cleric and a fighter and whatever, however many character classes you play, by all means, build up a stable. Now you have to do this at the beginning of a campaign. If you're going to start out with a bunch of real low levels, every time you begin a new low level, it's got to be in appropriate circumstances. Oh, pardon me. Sugar drop. Um, so we had a multiple array of characters to play, so that if Rob was running one over in the salt marshes or whatever, um, I could in say a game tonight. I'd see who was available. Number one, who was in that area, who could feasibly be there. Um, of the world, Greyhawk. It was what I don't know that I don't ever remember being referred to as Greyhawk. It was just Gary's world. I'm sure it was, but not when I played it. Pardon me, a little dry tonight. It's been snowing here a little bit, more than we normally get, but it's nothing. The fun. I'm going to digress a minute and talk about snow. I grew up in northwestern Illinois and lived 5, 6 winters in Wisconsin. So I like snow. I know snow. I learned how to drive in snow. Not that big a deal. Moved to Cincinnati. The first time we had snow forecast freaked me the hell out. We used to have a really great afternoon drive DJ. I used to listen to him because I had a job that involved driving a lot at the time. And he used to jokingly refer to it as the White Death. But my God, the way people would lose their shit here when they had 2 inches of snow forecast. The first time it happened, I didn't understand what's going on. As it happened, I was going to the Kroger that night to pick something up for supper that we needed for, that night's supper. And I got there and the place is packed. And everybody and their brothers got 4 gallons of milk and 16 or 24 rolls of toilet paper and 5 loaves of bread. The White Death is coming and they're laying in basic supplies. I was just like, oh, trying to figure out if this weekend, coming up was something special to the Cincinnati area. Was there, something coming up where they're all going to have milk toast or French toast or whatever. And found out that was the standard panic mode for the people of Cincinnati when they got a snow forecast. They all assumed they were going to be snowed in like Inuits in their igloos. The thing is, I grew up learning to drive in the snow. Over a period of time, I became experienced at driving in the snow. When I moved here, when I saw how few times it snowed, I said, okay, anybody that's probably only been driving 4 or 5 years hasn't had the opportunity to learn how to drive in snow. But hey, what about the people that were born and raised here? It seemed as though every March they just opened a petcock in the side of their head and they drained out everything they'd ever learned about driving in snow and started again next year when it started again, snowed. Anyway, I digress. I think you writing a novel or short stories is a fantastic idea. What is stopping you? Put your pen to paper, Tim. Well, you may not have heard the story. When we first put Eldridge Enterprises together, everybody, 3 of the 4 partners were very keen on the idea of writing short stories and publishing an anthology. I was not. It's not my bag. And of course, my partners announced that there would be stories by all of us in this anthology that was coming out. Heroes of Might and Magic, I think we called it. So I was stuck. Just the same way I ended up having to do a science fiction module because my partners had said I would. So I wrote a short story and I was very pleased with it when I was done. Now, writing it, I prolonged and I put it off and I procrastinated and I didn't want to do it and I didn't want to do it and I knew I had to do it. And so I finally wrote it and I was quite pleased with it when I got done and also felt like I'd just pushed a peach pit through the eye of a needle. And after it came out, I don't know whether they were sycophants or honest, but I got a lot of really nice comments on my story and why hadn't I written more. And then I gave the old peach pit through the eye of the needle metaphor, and they understood. It's kind of the same way now. I write what I get inspired to write. I like to write stories which are adventures. I wrote this short story in a culture from a module that I wrote, and or an adventure. In fact, this is probably the biggest one I wrote, called "Onto the Devil's Skillet." And it was all takes place in an enormous desert. But it's just not my bag. It's not what I like to write. Plot and protagonists. And it's not that I don't know how. It just doesn't give me pleasure. And at 72, I'm not about doing stuff unless it gives me pleasure of one kind or another, or at least satisfaction. Okay, in the case of old school clones and imitations, how important is it that the rules scale up from a D&D party to a war game? How often did D&D games involve war game sized battles back in the day? And I believe there was a reply that I saw earlier, but I could not get it. It kept spinning and spinning and spinning. That said somebody that it happened often for them. And that would be part of the answer I would give. It would all depend on the campaign. We liked playing chainmail. We had to play test swords and spells. So, of course, we had miniatures battles. Scaling up, the premise of becoming an adventurer was that you were a cut above the general population. You had enough desire, drive, initiative to throw down your plow and seek your fortune in the world. That having been said, now that you have a little experience, if you're going to scale up to swords and spells or chainmail, then characters should be captains. I don't care if you're just first level, you're still head and shoulders above the masses in the ranks of your army. It happened a lot in Lake Geneva because we needed it. It happened a lot in Minneapolis because it's the way they played. That's where they came from. The Braunstein, which has been quoted and cited so many times as being one of the Braunstein games, as being one of the seminal influences, they were miniatures battles. If your campaign is such that you get involved in the politics, you get involved in the dynastic struggles, if you have wars raging around, this is all relying upon the DM if he wants to go into that depth. I never did. We were solely focused on what we were doing. We did not get into the external politics. However, if you were playing something like the City State of the Invincible Overlord, you had to get into the politics because that was a big part of living in a big, huge city full of factions and stuff. We did it often in Lake Geneva because we not only wanted to, but we had to. So we play tested, just like we play tested Ancient Warfare. It's an excuse to play minis. We were minis oriented in Lake Geneva. All of us grew up as gamers, cutting our teeth on minis. Me a lot older than some of the Lake Geneva folks, but we were all dedicated minis players. One of the two Gen Cons, I think it was the second Gen Con that I came to, that I had a whole motel room, etc., all figured out. I entered 3 miniatures events, and I won all 3 of them. 3 different sets of rules, and 2 I did by skill, and 1 I did by psych. And when I met Brian late on the second day, when we finally got together, I was carrying around a little cardboard box full of trophies. And that's what convinced him that I probably knew what I was talking about gaming. So I got, my resume was partially that. Um, and again, one of the original goals of the game, as it was first written, was to build a character up to 9th, 10th, 11th, never more than 12th level, retiring them, amassing the fortune needed to build a keep, to build the walls, to hire men at arms to protect your keep from bandits and whatever. That was one of the goals. So that enabled us to bring retired characters back in with our retinue. And so, of course, we were the captain of our own part of the army that we brought in, regardless of who might have been the overall general or whatever. Okay. This is from a friend of mine, but I don't ever identify people. This might be something that only Gary, well, that's too bad. Possibly Rob, well, he's just about incognito. Or one of the Blooms, well, Brian's dead and nobody knows where Kevin went. Or maybe Bernard, no, he was way too late. Could answer, but I thought it running by you. Was there ever any notion that the 3 Little Brown Books would be used as an addition to other non-chainmail miniatures rules back in the day? No. I ask this given the custom of mashing rule sets together prevalent at the time. I personally think it's a long shot, but certainly something that folks might have considered back then in that environment. No, we didn't, and for good reason. Gary said that between him and the skills that the rest of us had, we could write all our own stuff. We didn't need to mash together. If we wanted something to combine 2 things before, we would write a new one. That was our philosophy at TSR. We didn't mash together. D&D grew out of chainmail, but then chainmail became swords and spells, which allows for magic on the battlefield, and it scaled way up. Now, a lot of people don't like it because it is a complex set of rules. But if you want to have mass fantasy battles, it's still the best set that I know of for mass fantasy, because it does a pretty good job of handling magic in a ramped up environment scale, better than chainmail. Chainmail does it okay in terms of fireballs and lightning bolts and stuff. But I think Swords and Spells is, again, it's a more complex system to learn, but I think it does a better job. It's got all the gravel and grit that a gritty old minis player could ask for. And it scared the hell out of a lot of people when we put it out. It was the last little book that I did. Also, remain vigilant for bands of crazed itinerant clerics. This evolved, the crazed itinerant clerics evolved out of a bull session that this individual and I had, driving a great deal of distance. I lived farther from Gary Con. He lived between where I live and Gary Con, and so for a couple, 3 years, we would ride up together. I'd just swing by and pick him up, and that way if I was really burned out on Sunday, I could get him to drive as far as where he lived and nap if I had to. Anyway, we were one of these things where one of us said something, and it ended up with crazed itinerant clerics that I actually wrote into an adventure module that I wrote. And there's a bunch of puns about Krispy Kreme and the magic glaze and whey bread. And I don't know. And the whole treasure that they're seeking, the library of so-and-so, it is extremely valuable. Extremely valuable. But it's one of those things that it's valuable to the right people because it's an enormous collection of cookbooks and recipes. I tend to think along weird lines like that every now and again. It's like, letting them find 350,000 copper pieces at the bottom of the well. Okay, dear Tim, hope you're sleeping well. Warning, what follows is pretty much a riff on sleeping. He has a whole bunch of questions, and I'm going to answer them one at a time. At least it's the beginning. What would prompt you to introduce a sleeping monster or foes during a game? Nothing. If I'm DMing a party that has to camp out overnight or whatever, I'm going to slant it the other way. They got to stay awake. Or strangler vines or crocodiles creeping out of the river or something is going to mess with them. That's just my style, my viewpoint, how I do it. What advantage do sleeping enemies give on stealth actions, or rather, what bonuses can PCs reasonably be expected to receive when stealthing up to sleeping monsters? Well, this presumes a lot. It presumes a lot. If the monsters are what I would consider dumb, just bestial, that's one thing. If they're smart, intelligent, wicked, evil, whatever, that's another. I can't foresee having fun DMing an adventure where they're out hunting through the jungle at night looking to kill something. I would think the jungle at night is so dangerous that my group probably wouldn't try it more than once or twice. And I can pretty much justify most anything I throw at them. They didn't used to, they were, back when I was doing this thing that had crocodilians, they didn't believe that a crocodile could jump into a boat until I brought them a photograph the next week, showed a 9 or 10 foot crocodile jumping into this fisherman's boat and him dancing along the gunnels trying to stay away from the snap, 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 snap of the, I think it was a big crocodile, probably a salty. So, yeah, if it's nighttime, it's time for the players to be on their toes. Is it possible for a PC to automatically strike and get full damage on a sleeping foe? Or is some sort of roll required? Well, if an occasion arose, Jack and the Beanstalk, sleep the giant. No roll. Giant's asleep. If it's something that's humanoid or something that the party's encountered before, knows about, they're going to know how to kill it right away. Ice pick in the ear, whatever. Bonk, no saving throw, dead. Now, okay, does that mean that ice pick just gave 80 points of damage? Yeah, it did. You got to apply some sort of real life logic to this circumstance. No, there'd be no saving throw involved. Now, I'd have a ton of saving throws on seeing if none of that they're going to wake up. Would a stealth roll cover that action? I don't know what a stealth roll is. That sounds like some sort of skill or ability shit that I don't play with. Can wizards sleep spell cast spells in their sleep? No. Vancian magic doesn't go off by accident. My world uses Vancian style magic. If yours doesn't, I guess you could. Now, I'm sure I read a book about a god dreaming and causing things to happen on the material plane. I'm sure that you could craft some interesting adventures around that concept. Could a sleeping wizard cast a spell that completely transforms the world? No. I hope you answer these questions with the same integrity, none, that I hereby imbue in them. May your dream spells always be merry and bright. Thanks for the videos. Keep them coming. Log note Tim and another ingratiations. In this case, ingratiations is schmoozing. Um, Again, if you're a psychology student and you've studied sleep, or you're a medical doctor that studied sleep, yeah, go for it, whatever. For the rest of us, a dreaming wizard could be a great quest. Somewhere locked in a tower somewhere, there's a wizard who's been cast into enchanted sleep, and every once in a while he has these terrible dreams that cause storms to ravage the land, or whatever. That'd be a great hook. Great hook. And again, it depends on the depth, the minutia, the nitty gritty of your campaign. All right, last one I have to respond to tonight. I'm not a fan of Discord, and I think using it will deter people from participating, but I'll check in as per the process. I look forward to GaryCon every year, and I'm a huge supporter. Don't see an issue with the process in general. I think it has definitely been blown away out of proportion. Great video, as always. Okay, stay and roll on. I'm not a huge fan of Discord either. It's not the most stable platform out there. However, to be fair, since the pandemic, Discord has really, really ranked up. They have really gotten some chops. There are others that I prefer to use. For instance, when I do my TotalCon games next month or my GaryCon games in March, I will go to the GaryCon or the TotalCon Discord, meet my players, give them the address on where I'll be on Zoom, say goodbye, and wait for them there. Number one, I take traffic off of that already heavily worked pipeline. And number two, I go to what I consider to be a better one. Not everybody can spend $1,000 a year on the top end Zoom. I don't. But luckily for me, a very good friend does for his company. And he's even giving me my own passwords and stuff. So I have that option. Discord's better than it was. Believe me. I use Discord every Wednesday night, audio only, when I play with up to 4 of my other 5 now, my other friends here all in the area, and we play Ticket to Ride, or we play Scythe, or whatever. There's not a lot of things online available. There's a couple, 3 I wish. I'd love to see somebody do Scoville and put in an online version, because I can tell you right now, 5 people I know would buy it, me and 4 others, because we loved playing the board game before the pandemic came down. You got to do what you got to do. Believe me, I think that being able to play online, seeing each other, even if it's a little tiny square, still being able to make the eye contact, or as close to eye contact as you can make in Zoom, I think it brings an added element to play. And it's the next best thing to being sitting around the table throwing spitballs at each other. Because actually you can throw insults and there's no danger of having anything hurled back at you physically, only verbally. I've run games. I ran, a few weeks back. I told you about the game I ran for a bunch of guys in England, in the UK. I'm not sure. I believe it was all England. I've just been approached, wanted to know if I wanted to run a game for some people on Okinawa. And I said I didn't care where they were. If I could hook up to them, I'd run a game for them. So I'm waiting for them to get back to me. I think learn to adapt. It's the best thing I can tell you. Adapt. Learn how to play online. There's a lot of, I like online because there's a lot of, in my games, there's a lot of trust. I trust my players with just about everything. I don't ask to see die rolls. I make my die rolls to hit, whatever, or damage, and not always damage, as a matter of fact. Um, because I tell the players, I said, I can't see the dice. We're playing on the honor system here. I'll tell you to give me a roll a 20, roll a 12, whatever. I won't necessarily tell you whether you got to go high or low. That way they've got their most fair dice in the game. And we'll go from there, and I'll trust you. You roll your own hits, you roll your own saving throws, and if you get hit, you roll your own damage. Now, it's partially in keeping with the whole ethos of the Wheel of Blame. It's not my fault. But that's the way we do it, and we have a great time. I've had a great time doing it. I really have had a great time. And most of the people that have commented at all have commented in a positive fashion. Nobody's gone on and excoriated me for bad game or ripping them off or whatever. And I'm ramping up my game too. Whereas it used to be all basically daylight, a series of tests and puzzles and conundrums. Now, from encounter to encounter, they can go from bright daylight to find themselves in the blink of an eye underground or in total darkness. And it just lends itself to that kind of herky-jerky. And for that reason, it's why I like to do it, because I get to bend it. Other than that, I think we're about done. I'm running 2 games for Total Con, so if you want to play in the Wheel of Blame for free, well, let me qualify that. One of them's completely free. One of them has a surcharge that's going to a named charity. Go to Total Confusion, 35, 36. They're well up there. And you sign up there. I think it's like $4 for the weekend for the virtual sign up. And there's games over the course of 4 days. I'm running 4 games for GaryCon, the Wheel of Blame each evening, and Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, I guess. And as long as I get 4 players in each one, I'll run all of them. I want cons to stay active. I want the friends we make at cons to stay the friends we see at cons, even if it's only in that little box. And of course, we can't see all the other people who don't play in our games, who we still are friends with or acquaintances with, or whatever. So I'm keeping the faith the best I can in running organized events during the conventions. I'll probably do. Oh, I know I'm going to do the same for North Texas, because I'm not traveling there yet. It's too early, and we'll see about Gamehole. I'll run virtual games if I don't go. I really want to be able to go, but we'll see what the state of Wisconsin and the overall COVID thing says. Now I'll do my regular COVID rant. Wear a mask. Wash those hands frequently. Sneeze into your elbow. And I might also caution you to do what I'm doing now. And if you are not, locally they've been advising to double masks. So it's not that much more of a pain in the ass. So what I do is I use a disposable paper one, and I put my fancy one over the top. And Cheryl and I are supposed to be eligible for the vaccine on the 1st of February, and I doubt that we'll be able to see enough of them in Ohio to get it probably before the middle of February. So I still got 2.5 weeks left to be good and stay safe, and I want you all to do the same. The severity in the deaths seems to be coming down a little bit. Don't slack off now, or we'll never be able to get back together again at conventions. And if we don't do it pretty soon, I may not be around that long. Just kidding. And on that gloomy note, I'll tell you all, Dodada Gobi. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Tight with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Curmudgeon.